The courtroom was filled with an air of arrogance as the corrupt officers smirked, shaking hands like victors. Their high-priced lawyers had just secured what seemed to be an easy dismissal of all charges. The judge, seemingly indifferent, nodded along as the defense presented their final arguments. The prosecution remained silent, as if resigned to defeat. It was an open secret. The system had failed once again. The officers, once accused of extortion, bribery, and even violence, now exchanged congratulatory pats on the back. Spectators whispered among themselves, some disgusted, others fearful. The families of victims clenched their fists in quiet rage, knowing that justice had once again slipped through their fingers. It was yet another case where power had triumphed over truth. The lead defense attorney straightened his tie, turning toward his clients with a confident nod. "Gentlemen, you're free to go," he said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. The officers chuckled, exchanging knowing glances. It was all too easy. The prosecution had barely put up a fight, and the case had been dismissed on a technicality. One officer leaned toward another and muttered, "Told you nothing would happen. We run this city." His partner smirked, adjusting his badge as if it were a crown. The judge banged his gavel, signaling the end of the hearing. The officers rose from their seats, ready to walk out as free men. Just as they turned toward the exit, a slow, deliberate clap echoed through the courtroom. It was a single man standing at the back of the room. His suit was crisp, his presence commanding. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. The officers frowned, unsure of who he was or why he was clapping. The man stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Congratulations," he said, his voice steady yet sharp. "You really thought you got away with it, didn't you?" His tone sent a ripple of unease through the room. The officers exchanged glances, suddenly less sure of their victory. The lead officer scoffed, stepping forward. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. The man smiled slightly, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small black wallet and flipped it open, revealing a golden badge. "James Carter," he said, his voice carrying a weight that made the entire room hold its breath. "Director of the FBI." The courtroom, once filled with murmurs of celebration, turned to hushed shock. The officers' faces lost their color, their confidence evaporating instantly. The defense attorney's smirk disappeared, replaced by a look of sheer panic. The judge, who had just ruled in their favor, shifted uneasily in his seat. "You see," Carter continued, stepping closer, "this case wasn't about winning or losing today. It was about seeing who would reveal their true colors. And gentlemen, you did exactly what I expected." His gaze locked onto each officer, dissecting their fear with ruthless precision. One of the officers stammered, This is a joke, right? You can't just waltz in here and—" Carter cut him off with a cold chuckle. "Oh, but I can," he said, "because while you were busy celebrating, my team was gathering everything we needed to make sure this case never really ended." He gestured to the back of the courtroom, where a group of men in dark suits entered. They moved swiftly, handing out sealed folders to the judge, the prosecution, and even the defense attorneys. The judge hesitated, then opened his folder. His face turned pale as he read through the pages. Inside each folder were mountains of evidence, wiretaps, bank records, internal memos, and even hidden surveillance footage. Carter's team had collected proof that went far beyond the courtroom's original case. This wasn't just about corruption. This was about an entire criminal empire hiding behind the badge. The lead officer took a shaky step back. "This isn't possible," he whispered. His hands trembled as he reached for the folder an agent handed him. He flipped through the pages, his breath quickening. Every secret deal, every bribe, every cover-up, it was all there in black and white. Carter leaned in. "I let you think you were winning," he said, his voice like steel. "I let you believe the system was on your side. But the truth is, we were always one step ahead." The officers stood frozen, the weight of their crimes crashing down upon them. The prosecution, who had remained silent throughout the trial, finally spoke. "Your Honor," she said, her voice now firm and unwavering, "with this new evidence, I move to immediately refile charges against the defendants under federal jurisdiction." The defense attorney scrambled to object, but Carter simply raised a hand. "Save it," he said. "Your clients won't be needing legal representation where they're going." His words sent a cold chill through the room. The officers, moments ago triumphant, now looked like trapped animals. The judge, after a long pause, nodded. "Motion granted," he declared, his voice no longer indifferent but resolute. "The defendants will be taken into federal custody immediately." He banged the gavel again, this time sealing their fate. Federal agents moved in swiftly, slapping handcuffs onto the officers who had just been celebrating. Their faces twisted in horror as the realization sank in. They weren't walking free. They were walking straight into the harshest prison sentences of their lives. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs, the victims' families watching with wide eyes. Some gasped, others let out quiet cries of relief. Justice, the kind they had long believed impossible, was finally being served. One officer, still in shock, turned to Carter as he was being led away. "You set us up," he muttered. Carter gave a small, almost pitying smile. "No," he said. "You set yourselves up the moment you thought you were untouchable." As the officers were dragged out, Carter turned toward the prosecution. "Make sure this sticks," he said. "We're cleaning house and it starts today." The prosecutor nodded, her eyes burning with new determination. The lead defense attorney slumped into his seat, realizing there was no loophole, no technicality that could undo what had just happened. His clients were finished, and with them, an era of unchecked corruption was finally coming to an end. Carter took one last look around the courtroom before walking toward the exit. The job wasn't done, not yet. There were more corrupt officials to expose, more justice to deliver. But for today, this was a victory, a reminder that even the untouchable could fall. Outside, the press swarmed, shouting questions. Carter adjusted his suit, pausing only to deliver a single statement. "The law is not a shield for criminals. It's a sword for justice. And we will keep swinging." Then, without another word, he stepped into his car and disappeared into the night.